Welcome to our Monday, December 13th board meeting. If you'll join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, with that, we'll move on to our agenda approval, deletions, additions. Dr. Baracco.
Thank you, Mrs. Suze. You do have a revised agenda at your table. We have some additions to Roman numeral 7B1, Mrs. Mooch's personnel. We have addition to 7C1, professional leave request for Dr. Bracy, and we have some adjustments under 7D1 and 2 for Mrs. Castaneda.
Move to approve the revised agenda.
Thank you. We have a motion by Dr. Medlin. Second. Second by Mrs. Kelly. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Mr. Marshall, is there any correspondence this evening?
Thank you, Madam President. There is none this evening.
All right, we'll move right into our liaison committee updates. Mr. Marshall?
I have nothing to report tonight.
Mrs. Kelly?
I also have nothing to report this evening.
Dr. Medlin?
Nothing to report, thank you.
Dr. Malco?
Actually, I just returned from a Lake Central Education Foundation meeting. I just returned from a Lake Central Education Foundation meeting. The one thing that they want us to share with you, or they wanted me to share with you, which becomes very important as the organization tries to grow and develop. Remember, these are for active activities to do in the classroom to augment and enrich what we have going on. But the Lake Central Education Foundation wants to be sure that everyone knows applicants submitting the grants can be current staff members, students, residents, business persons who reside within the corporate boundaries of the Lake Central School Corporation. So, for example, I see a gentleman here from the fire department. So if you come up with a creative idea and can find a staff member to work with you, we would encourage you to do that. Again, remember, is to augment and enrich what's going on in the classrooms. That was the most important thing that they wanted me to share with you tonight. So, thank you.
Thank you. And I have nothing for either of my committees.
Oh, with legislative, I think that Dr. Varacco has a nice summary, so I'll defer to him. Don't you, Larry?
Yes, it's my item for tonight.
Okay.
All right, so our official school board business topics consent agenda. Dr. Baracco.
Thank you again. Seek board approval for the minutes from our meeting on November 15th, as well as approval of the claims, payroll, and extracurricular expenditures you received in your packets last week.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion by Mrs. Kelly,
Second?
second by Mr. Marshall. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. There are no public comments regarding action items, so we'll move right into our official school board business regular agenda. Dr. Baracco.
Thank you. I just wanted to go over some items with the board this evening related to some upcoming anticipated legislation. These are my notes from a combination of the School Board Association dinner, which most of you attended, but then also from my conference last week down in Indianapolis, where we heard from other speakers, including a member of the state Senate. It appears that there is going to be legislation of some form regarding partisan school boards. It appears that that is prompted by the whole mask topic across the state, where some constituents feel that the people they elected are not following what they expected them to when they ran for office. So the legislation will either give school board candidates the option, or there's even some chatter that it could possibly require school board candidates to declare a party affiliation. Of course, they could always say they're independent, and then that would force voters to actually ask the candidates what you stand for, which is historically how we've hoped that it would always work. Many individuals who have spoken, both conservative and liberals, oppose the measure. They're concerned that people could lose the incentive to hear specifically what candidates stand for. We always are worried about straight ticket voting, which if somebody's been a longtime board member who's been great for their community and their school system, they could lose their seat just because of straight ticket voting. Some folks are worried about potential political control from regional, state, or national parties. I find it interesting that only 4 years ago, the General Assembly made the state superintendent an appointed position to get politics out of K-12 education. But 4 years later, it seems that doesn't hold anymore, and now we need politics into K-12 schools in Indiana. I think it's important to know that if schools are failing to follow state-approved curriculum, safety measures, or guidelines regarding financial matters, there are already mechanisms in place to correct all of those issues. And I've had throughout this last year and a half some local residents, taxpayers, share that certain board members are set in their ways because they're hard Ds or hard R, to which I respond that let's not confuse a board member's stance on one item with what they're totally standing for. We have people who might think we should follow the state guidelines on masks, but they're very fiscally conservative. So, and that fits right in with the way we operate this place anyway, in a conservative manner when it comes to fiscal matters. The point is that board members, they do develop position on individual issues, and it can vary from topic to topic. So, a lot of folks are just saying, if it's a priority and the Republicans have a supermajority, obviously they can make it happen if they choose to, but hopefully it's well thought through, and hopefully through the surveys that were done, that we all received from our representatives. For me, it's Representative Olthoff. For most of our district, it's Mr. Slager, and hopefully they'll weigh in and maybe influence the direction of that legislation. One other piece that I think is going to be a hot topic this spring will be access to curriculum and greater opportunities for parents to influence learning materials. What we're hearing is really a lot of people want to see what's being taught daily in the schools. What we have not heard or been presented with are specific examples where students brought home notes or quizzes or projects or assignments that offer evidence that critical race theory has been taught in that particular classroom. And it appears that while the General Assembly is saying they want curriculum to be more transparent or more readily available, the people I've talked to at my last two big meetings say they really believe parents want what's happening daily. And as I said in my response to Representative Olthoff, I think the General Assembly should encourage parents to look at what the children are bringing home. It's easy to ask your kid what happened today, as I've done hundreds of times, and the answer is, the first answer at least, is nothing. And then I say, no, come on, that's not going to fly. Let's give me an example from what you did in English, and then you get going with a conversation. So I think the important thing is to, we've never had a problem with people questioning what the stuff is, but it's not fair to speculate about things that aren't happening. And so we would encourage everybody to actually look at what's going on. Finally, we've had some people question certain books that we're using in our school or may be available in the library. As I've said to the board already, we will be putting together an additional review process to look at some of those things. And I think it's important that if we are going to look at any writing that includes explicit language, especially when it's regarding sexuality, we have to decide how much of that is necessary. Having said all that, this should not lead to schools not teaching topics that are important for students. We cannot just shelter our kids and say, well, if we don't talk about it, it doesn't exist. We do have an obligation to prepare our children for the dangers that are out there. And so when things are professionally taught by our teachers, they can lead discussions on uncomfortable but important topics. We just need to make sure we're doing it the right way. So we do anticipate some new requirements regarding access to learning materials, and we'll see where that goes, and we'll continue to follow that closely. And then my final thing I wanted to talk about a little bit tonight is the end to the public health emergency that's been in place since March of 2020. Both Governor Holcomb and the General Assembly are looking to end the public health emergency. Speakers from both our School Boards Association and the Superintendent's Organization believe that the Indiana General Assembly will be discussing this matter at length when the session begins in early January. We hope that quarantine language is adjusted. I said many times we think it's too lengthy, and we believe more people would be acceptable to it if we were able to get students back in school more quickly if they needed to be quarantined. So, you know, this is just me talking now. You know, as I follow the data, it appears that about 96% of the people who are close contact who develop symptoms, it happens within a 4 or 5 day period. So let's pick some number, 5 or the 6th day, and a negative test gets you back the following day. Maybe you don't catch 99.6%, maybe you only catch 96.8%, but it saves the rest of those students a week of being out of school. And that's important when we are now delivering instruction one way. And that's why I share that. We also hope that a compassionate approach, void of absolute comments regarding who is or is not impacted by COVID, is taken, because a lot of Hoosiers and Americans have been lost to COVID, have had, you know, problems with it, and it's troubling when people want to say nobody ever dies from it, and yet we all, well, not all of us, but a lot of us do know people who, were it not for COVID, they'd still be around. We also hope that any updated guidance is set based on hospitalization, the need for oxygen, or other extensive treatment. We should have a fair amount of data from this first 22 months of the COVID era. And we also hope that the General Assembly gives us more specific guidelines, like they're willing to do for how many safety drills we do, our staff trainings, how we use our budget, the number of school days, et cetera. I'm not convinced we're ever going to get an overwhelming percentage of community members to agree with mitigation efforts. But if we focus on the number of people who do have serious consequences from COVID, and it's based on hospitalization, the ability to get care for not only COVID patients, but somebody else who has something serious happen to them, I think we would get more acceptance. And then we're also interested to see how the General Assembly is going to approach this immunity from civil liability piece. And if you remember back in February of last year, they worked hard to get that through quickly because they were worried about many of the schools that weren't in person, and they wanted to take that liability piece off the table for if somebody came to school, and not that I'm sure how they would prove it, but if somebody felt that they got sick and died from exposure at school, that we would not be held accountable if we follow the rules. And for people who have continued to say the Department of Health doesn't know what they're doing, even if you wanted to accept that, this ability not to be liable in a civil lawsuit is important, and we have a fiduciary responsibility to try to keep ourselves out of those kinds of legal problems. And so, you know, we always need to remember that we're only offering one delivery system of learning for LC students this year, and our goal since last summer, since the school year started, has been to keep as many kids in the classroom every day as we can. And that's going to be, you know, our continuing goal through second semester. But we will keep the board posted as this stuff starts happening on January 3rd. Questions?
Yes, if I could, Cindy? Yeah, yeah, Dr. Varco, so are you hearing that there will be a focus on this issue by our legislators? Are you hearing that? Because I have not until today. I heard it from someone, but what's the circle saying that you are involved with?
Yeah, because as I said to Mrs. Dubish a month ago, you know, most people are following the Department of Health guidelines because that's what's been laid out. There's a clear connection between the General Assembly saying you have authority, General Assembly saying you're free of this civil liability if you follow the rules as outlined by the Department of Health, but there are people who don't like what those rules are that the Department of Health has.
Right.
Well, they have the supermajority, they have the power to change it, and so if they want to change it, they will.
Okay, well,
And people believe that they do want to change it.
okay, all right. Well, the reason I ask is because I heard that first I heard that they were not even going to touch that issue and that they were going to leave it at the local level. But then just recently I heard that they were actually going to get involved, they meaning the legislators. So I just wondered what the current status was. Do we need to be reaching out to legislators? Because quite honestly, this quarantining requirement is causing a lot of problems for our students, our parents, our teachers. You know, they have to manage all these documents, and I feel like they have locked us in a corner. They, meaning the government down in the state legislature or the state governor. So do we need to be reaching out to our legislators to, you know, give us some direction on this?
I believe that our elected officials pay attention, and I believe they've been seeing what's going on, not just at Lake Central, but across the state, and that's why I think they will come up with something. How much different it is from what we're doing now, I can't say. I mean, they have a lot to think about as well, because there's been discrepancies with different things, you know, so, but yeah, I do expect them to do something. I'm not sure that they need to hear from me, because I think they're paying attention to what's been going on all across the state and the country.
Is your superintendent group, they have verbally or at least expressed their platform relating to this? I know we have as a school board association. I know that Terry Spradlin has been very vocal about it. But I didn't know what was going on with the superintendent's association.
Well, I think between the superintendents, the principals organization, and the school board association, they all want kids in school. And so, you know, none of us are cut from that cloth where we're comfortable picking and choosing which rules or expectations of the state we're going to follow. It's a real slippery slope when you start picking and choosing. And so, since the vast majority of people are following the rules, if there really is a groundswell of support to change it, I would expect that the General Assembly would do so.
Well, and then I had another question for you. I received as a text message, and I never read it in any professional journal or even a local newspaper, a statement that maybe came from the Lake County Health Department, perhaps on Friday of this past week.
Yeah, that appears to be a warning to the people who are not quarantining that, you know, basically what they've told us in every single webinar from the Department of Health in July, August, September, October, that it's not a May provision. You need to keep track of who's positive, you need to contact trace, and you need to quarantine. And that's just reminding those people who aren't, you're not doing it right.
I wasn't sure, was that from the state, or from the Lake County Health Department? I couldn't.
Yeah, that was
see
from
the source.
Dr. Vavilala.
Okay, I wondered. All right, thank you for clarification.
Any other comments or discussion? Thank you, Dr. Varco. With that, we'll move on to our Director of Human Resources Personnel, Mrs. Mucha.
Thank you very much. We are recommending that the following personnel items be approved.
Move to approve?
We have a motion by Mr. Marshall,
Second.
second by Dr. Medlin. Any discussion, questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion
Thank you.
passes.
Thank you. I also, in your packets, I have included the high school summer school schedule. Just for your information, it already is out and ready to roll on those dates. Any questions on that?
So do we have the new
High school summer school,
summer school, right?
yes.
Okay. Same plan as always? Nothing new added?
Just different dates.
Right. Okay, and we're still going to go ahead and use the Indiana Online Academy as an option?
Yes. it
And am I
serves our
correct
students
in
very well.
Right, and I am correct in understanding that could be an intervention to enrich or to remediate, right?
A lot of the ones from the Indiana Academy are for credit for enrichment.
Credit recovery, but they could also
We
be.
do have credit recovery in our own school.
Right. But students could take those
They could.
courses as enrichment, right?
Oh, yeah.
Or remediation, yes.
My kids do, yes.
Sure.
Okay, I just want to make sure on that. That's cool. Very good.
Okay, thank you.
Are they planning on testing to be in person this summer, hopefully? Or will it all be online, or we don't know? We don't know. Okay.
Everything's crossed.
Everything's fingers are crossed. Thank you. Well, we'll move on to our Director of Primary Education, Dr. Bracy.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I am coming before you tonight seeking your approval for the professional leave request you have received in your packets.
Move to approve the professional leave requests.
We have a motion by Dr. Medlin,
Second?
second by Mrs. Kelly. Any discussion, questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. I would also like to share the exciting news that our early intervention grant has been approved. The Indiana Literacy Early Intervention Grant, or the EIG, is focused on improving early literacy for students in grades K, 1, and 2. Our district is blessed to have reading specialists or interventionists who have identified a need for a stronger phonics program for our younger students. We are working together to identify an evidence-based program that would best fit the needs of our students. Thank you.
Do we know any amount of money that we will receive?
Yes, it's just a little bit over $28,000.
I'm sorry.
It's a little over $28,000, and it's not shared equally. It depends on the number of students. So each child receives the same amount of money. So just say if a school has 100 students in K through 2, they would receive a certain amount. If you have 150, they would receive a larger amount.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Bracy, that's K through 2?
K through 2. It's early
Thank you.
intervention.
Thank you.
Yes.
Now, one other question, I'm sorry. We still get separate money for summer school, though. This
This is not
is
summer school.
just,
Correct.
okay.
This is to catch them early. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our Director of Secondary Education, Mrs. Castaneda.
Good evening. For my first item, I am seeking your approval for the revised professional leave request that you received this evening.
Motion to approve. We have a motion by Mrs. Kelly,
I'll second that.
second by Dr. Malco. Any questions, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And for my second item, I am seeking your approval for the revised field trip request that you received this evening.
Move to approve the field trip requests.
We have a motion by Dr. Medlin,
Second?
second by Mrs. Kelly. Any questions or discussion?
Well, excuse me, Mrs. Susan. This is new, isn't it, the handbell choir to go to an all-state competition?
That's why it's in there.
I'm sorry. Is this new, the handbell choir to go to an all-state competition? I don't remember that in past years.
I don't believe it's new. I just don't think we've done it in quite some time.
We have not done it?
Mm.
I was going to say,
Yes.
this is new for us.
Well, I believe that Lake Central has done it in the past, but we haven't done it in a few years.
Okay.
So
Okay,
that's why
all right, thank you.
Good luck to them. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. And for my last item, we have some new course proposals for Lake Central High School that we're very excited about, and I'm going to bring up Mr. Beth. We also have some special guests with us this evening as well.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'd like to introduce, we have four fire chiefs, the four fire chiefs that serve our town. We have Chief Joe Martin from Dyer. We have Chief Kevin Ledoux from St. John. He also has the Lake County Fire Training Facility in his town, and that kind of comes into play with the next conversation. We have Shane Adams. He runs the Lake Hills Volunteer Fire Department over there off of Austin. We got Chief Patterson from Sherrville, who just came from his town safety meeting, which is the reason he's all dressed in his good gear and so forth. So he's trying to make us look bad. So.
Always looks like that, don't you? You always look good.
So they have been with us quite a bit today because they were also at the elementary schools doing some emergency medical training and stuff with them. So once we're done, I'm going to get them out the back and get them on their way. But so they came to me in the summer with the idea of trying to start a fire academy program of some type here. And we have 4 different fire departments, and they are very different in how they serve the community because like Shane has got a lot of volunteers. They don't get paid. You know, Chief Patterson is what's called a career firefighter, so they do the 24 on, 48 off. And then Dyer and St. John are kind of a hybrid. They have some guys who do that, and then they have a lot of paid on call, plus they have volunteers. So one of the things that they are struggling with, as much of the country is struggling with, is personnel. So they had asked about trying to do some type of training program to try and increase the recruitment of kids into the program, whether it's male, female, anything that they can do to try and help the town. Because the town is short, especially on the volunteer end. Okay? So they are short shift, they are, doubling up, they are doing what they can, obviously, to do it. So we sat down and we looked at some options. So from the school's point of view, we have the opportunity, especially with the Lake County Fire Training Facility being in St. John, is to actually put our kids into a program. So it'll be very similar to like our vocational program, which are like our auto, our machine shop. So they'd be in the classroom for 3 hours a day, and we will bus them over. So they will do some coursework here on site, and then they will be bused over to the Lake County Training Facility, which is right in the back area of the St. John Public Works Building. So they will be doing, they have like a fire truck, so they get to learn all the parts of the fire truck. They have a 4-story building that has like a sprinkler system hooked up that you have to hook the truck up to. They have an elevator shaft, so you have, the kids will learn all kinds of practical skills there. So they will have the theory in the classroom, and then they will have the ability to do the practical side. So for us, it also qualifies as a graduation pathway. And there are 2 firefighter certification exams that they can take upon completion of this class. If they pass those tests, then they can go out and work as a fireman once they pass those exams. So they would be career ready. They could go into a high demand area. And because this is a high value area, the state provides us with vocational funding. For this school year, it is about $1,000 per kid. So every kid we get in would be valued at that amount. So for us, this is good for our kids. It's good for our towns. We see this as an opportunity. There's actually 3 classes in the program, so you'll see 3 classes. It's all part of the same thing because you need all 3 classes to qualify as a pathway. So they would meet concurrently throughout the school year. At the end, they would work on their exams. They have all kinds of certifications they would get, like hazmat, CPR, autism awareness. They go through all these different programs as well because all the firemen have to be certified. And there's a whole list of them. I only did the 3 I remember because there's a lot of letters and abbreviations, and I don't know them all. I'm learning a lot, but I don't know them all. So there's a whole lot of things that they're going to learn. They will be career ready. Now this is the fire side of the fire program, because then you also have the medical part. So when they would complete the fire side, they would all pay for them to go to a EMT training program, okay? So that the fire chiefs would do that. And then the state is also paying, if they want to do the paramedic side of things, there's all kinds of scholarships and grants that these guys will then meet with the kids on how they can get that option if they actually want to go the full time, the career like Sherrville has with the 24 on, 48 off. So this is a great opportunity for our kids. It's a great opportunity for our towns. And then if we are approved and we hire somebody, we will try and get them credentialed as dual credit as well. So for us, there's a lot that our students will benefit from as well. So, I want to thank you, and obviously it's up to you now.
So is this a 2-year program or?
It's a 1-year program.
1 year.
And
So-
do you have to be a senior or junior?
So we actually, the 4 chiefs and I, we stood in the hallway and we did some recruiting, and we had 75 kids come up who
Wow.
expressed an
That's
interest in
great.
taking the course.
Wonderful.
About 30 of them were 11th graders, so those would be the first choice for this, because continuity is our goal, to keep it going for, 10, 15 years. So if I take 11th graders who will be 12th graders next year, then I'm not robbing Peter from the younger
Sure.
ages to take Paul. So that is our hope, is we get the upperclassmen, the seniors more so than the juniors or sophomores.
So then upon graduation, they're certified, ready to go?
They have to pass the test.
Okay.
But then they would be ready to go on the fire side of things, so they could go to fire calls and so forth. One of the things is, as a volunteer, a lot of insurance companies will not cover an 18-year-old driving the fire truck.
Sure.
So, that will take time, but yes, they can answer calls, they can participate. Some of the fire stations will let an 18-year-old drive the truck, but most of the municipality insurance is kind of frowned upon that. But they are trying to change that because they are shorthanded right now, so.
So knowing that this doesn't create a new pathways, it just augments what you already have going on?
We do
In
not
the
have a
career?
public, at Lake Central, we do not have a public safety pathway.
We don't?
No,
Okay.
not particular our school, but our kids can take them at the Hammond Career Center, because that is who we are partnered with. So the Hammond Career Center has blessed off on us.
Wait, can I say that again? Hammond Career Center what? I'm
Has-
sorry.
Okay, our licensing for teachers for any type of vocational program comes from the Hammond Career Center.
Correct.
They blessed us off that they will license this teacher. We still have to go to the superintendent consortium of all the Career Center schools in May, and they have to bless it off as well, but the Hammond Career Center says that we will have their support, so we do not see that being a problem.
And in the past, to clarify that last point, the only time the superintendent's consortium had a problem with a program was when it was a duplicate of what was already offered at the Hammond Career Center. And so if schools pull too many kids out of a certain program and then the program can't run at the Career Center, well, that backfires. So that's the only time
Right.
in all my years of being up at the Career Center that I've been involved, and it was a construction program. And it ended up getting approved. We just had to work with it a little bit. So as long as it's not a duplicate, it's generally not considered a problem. The problem is, of course, keeping the program going, because these things have, generally get interest early on, and then can it be sustained? But if it's set up the right way, I think it will be.
So, because I was thinking when I toured the Career Center, they did have this program there. Did they have well, they had something,
They had the EMT program.
okay.
So, which we technically could not do because they have it. So,
So-
we could have tried to do it, but this one they don't have, and they've already been supportive. We've met with them, and they like the idea. So, they would like to
Okay.
bring their kids out, but that's like a 45-minute bus ride to the Career Center, and then another 45 minutes. That's a little bit difficult for them, so.
Right, right. So then when they do the follow-up and they do the EMT training, that would be at what location?
They would probably do that through a hospital,
Okay,
or even on site, because I think they have
Okay.
their own trainers on
Yeah.
site. So whatever would work best for these guys as they're bringing them in and
yeah,
stuff.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a wonderful opportunities for our children, and all 4 of these young men are quality characters, so I think it's a good addition to our staff, really.
I'm in a text group with them. I wish my kids would answer me as fast as they do. It's,
I mean, I remember when Shane Adams was a little kid riding the bus, right? Yeah, so they grow and they mature and they develop into these wonderful adults, and we appreciate what you're doing.
and I've
That's a
been
great
sending
idea.
him kids for about 10 years, over to Lake Hills as volunteers when they were 17 and 18.
Yeah,
That's kind of why they kind of came to me, so, 'cause
Yeah.
I've kind of already been involved, so.
yeah, okay. Well,
Ed, before you sit down, I'd like to extend a big thank you from myself as well as the board for these gentlemen's involvement in this program. It's a wonderful opportunity. And I'm going to diverge from the agenda a little bit and ask a question, whether individually, any of the gentlemen or the chief, possibly law enforcement, would you like to make any comments on the recent publication of cross-training that's going on between the fire departments and police departments? Any comments? I know it's not part of the agenda, and I might catch you off guard here, but,
Sir, are you speaking of what you just saw in the paper with Dyer Fire and Police?
yes.
So,
Mr. Beck, can you have him step up, please?
so what we were doing was, again, you have to realize is every emergency scene, police and fire are showing up together. So the premise of it was not to make a firefighter a police officer, a firefighter.
Exactly.
We have our own separate end, but what it was simple. I came from an area that sees a little bit more structure fires before I came to Dyer. I just became the chief in June. So we worked with our police department on different things on fire scenes. So if you see the buildings on fire, close the front door, limits the oxygen, therefore the fire won't grow. So it was simple things like that we were working with our PD on, so that the response to incidents like hazardous materials events, structure fires, the high hazard, low frequency events that we respond to, they kept safe and they also helped the situation. On the other end, it was also us. So imagine a gunshot victim. Police and fire and EMS are going to roll to that because obviously they need intervention on the medical side, but there also needs to be intervention on the PD side. So how can we show up, and I'm sure the cops will chuckle, how can we show up as the medical staff and the fire staff and not do our job, but also not disrupt the crime scene that's ongoing? So all it was, the goal was, is that Dyer Police and Fire can have a better relationship going forward, which we have a great one already when I already showed up. But how can we better serve each other on that scene and then our community? All the other stuff that you saw was just a fun portion of it. So it gained better respect for us with the police officers. So one of my guys was teamed up with one of Chief Alcott's personnel in the virtual shooter. My guys were just completely blown away on what a police officer would have to do, clearing a building and, you know, making that split-second decision on, you know, when they would actually fire. Our end was we put them in the flashover chamber, which is this big box that we light on fire, and we teach them about fire behavior, and every one of the cops loved it. They thought it was the craziest thing ever, and all the things that we were teaching them leading up to it about fire behavior just clicked. So the very next day, we had a structure fire in Dyer, and it went like clockwork. So that wasn't a cross-training to make anybody trust me, I can never be a cop. I respect the heck out of these guys and gals. So what it was again, to bring just this heightened sense of awareness on what both of our ends do, and on top of that, just help our response to our
Wonderful.
community. Yeah,
I appreciate your thoughts.
absolutely.
Sure.
We appreciate that, thank you. All right, so we'll move on to our Director of Student Services, Mrs. Mucha for Mrs. Gramala.
Thank you very much. In your packet, she has some professional leave forms that she's asking for your approval.
Move to approve the professional leave form.
We have a motion by Dr. Medlin,
Second?
second by Mr. Marshall. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes, thank you.
Thank you.
Now on to our Director of Facilities, Mr. Ledyard.
Thank you, Mrs. Seuss. Tonight, just have one item I seek your approval on. It's to award and execute the Schmidt & Associates contract for the Bivich addition, which I think Dr. Rocco's kind of briefed you on. That, so I'm just here to, it's the architectural engineering design. We'd like to go ahead and get that going here before the end of the year, and then we'll have a whole lot more detail on our second meeting in January, our first meeting in February, but we'd like to get the design work going on that.
Move to approve.
We have a motion by Mr. Marshall. Second. Second by Mrs. Kelly. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
And our Director of Business Services, Mr. James.
Good evening. My only item is to seek your approval for the donations that were included in your board packet.
Motion to approve. We have a motion by Mrs. Kelly.
Second?
Second by Dr. Malco. Any questions? Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much.
Excuse me, Mr. James, I do have a question. This is under Mrs. Mucha's section, but it's the TAG, Teacher Appreciation Grants.
Yeah, because that's personnel.
Right, okay, nobody was going to talk about it?
Well, that's what we talked about at the last meeting when you approved.
Right,
Paying
I
all
know we
those
talked
people?
about it. Okay,
So then it was included in your packet,
okay.
so.
It's just unusual to have a paper and it's not really addressed, so I just wanted to make sure it wasn't an oversight, so this
It was
is,
part of the personnel report.
right,
So.
from an earlier conversation at our last meeting.
Correct.
Got it, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. With that, we'll move on to our public comments. Before I call anybody up, I just want to remind everyone that public comments are limited to 3 minutes per person, 30 minutes total. I want to remind anyone that will be addressing the board to refrain from personal attacks or derogatory statements about any school employee, fellow citizen, student, or anyone else in attendance or not. With that, we will call up our first speaker. If you'd please state your name and your address. Margaret Jablonski.
Good evening. My name is Margaret Jablonski. My address is on Matthew Street in Crown Point.
Thank you.
It's been a while. Life gets in the way of politics and pandemics, doesn't it? As I have promised in the past, we are still here. We, the vocal minority, demanding options, have not disappeared, nor will we. Thank you for providing this opportunity to those of us who never thought we had it in us to speak publicly, to go against the official narrative, to dig deep and dig hard for information. It has been an eye-opening experience, and though I do not enjoy it, I know it will benefit my kids in the long run. I hope that they will learn to speak up for what they believe in, even if it's unpopular and therefore hard. Stop the mandatory masking. I will speak against the choices being taken away from us until you provide me with the proof that the masks work. I will continue to badger you with emails and my heavily accented speeches until you demonstrate that the virus is more dangerous to our children than the ridiculous restrictions imposed by the government agencies. I will speak against our freedoms being trampled upon until you show me that kids in our schools that test positive are being hospitalized in significant numbers. I will come before you until you can prove that significant transmission takes place in schools, not at Walmart, not at grandma's, not at a sleepover, but in the Lake Central schools, because apparently life is going on normally outside of school walls. Everyone who wishes to do so has had a chance to receive the safe and effective vaccine. It is recommended, not mandated or enforceable, that vulnerable members of our community mask at school functions held in your buildings. Why can't the same be recommended and not mandated for the population least likely to suffer severe COVID? Especially since this disease seems to be smart enough to know when it's in a classroom, we're all gonna die, versus a basketball game. We're safe while screaming, cheering, sweating in the presence of about 1,000 people who are done social distancing. I must say it was very refreshing to see hundreds of smiling faces at the most recent basketball game at LC. Students, parents, staff, and board members, nearly all maskless, all making choices best for them. Stop the mandates. Stop harming those you are so intent on protecting. Listen to us, the parents who will never put our kids in harm's way. It is time. To answer your questions from before, yes, you do need to reach out to legislators. We have been. We've been emailing, we've been calling. In the meantime, please keep us appraised on how our tax money is being spent on the lawsuit you have recently been served with. It's a shame that funds that could actually benefit our students are going to be wasted on an unnecessary and easily avoidable litigation. That too will be something remembered on Election Day. As someone once said, you might recognize the quote, "Please don't tell other people how to be. Let us live our lives as we see fit." Thank you.
Sherry True.
Cherie True, Primrose Drive in Dyer, Indiana. Just wanted to talk about two concepts that we always talk about here at LC, which is one is leadership and the other one is being courageous. Being a leader is not always going and doing what everyone else around you does. It's taking the path that is less traveled by. That is what we're supposed to be teaching our children to do, to be leaders in society, to take those chances, to not always go with the grain. But yet here we are, meeting after meeting, and everyone deferring these decisions to someone else. Oh, it's not me, it's the governor. Oh, it's not me, it's the health board. Why doesn't anyone here take that leadership role and go and challenge what those decisions are on behalf of our community, on behalf of our children? We want our children to be successful. That's what education is about. They can be productive members of society when they are done with that. But what are we teaching them? To be afraid of their fellow classmates, to only do what they are told, to wear a mask and be compliant? That is hardly a skill set that they need to be successful in life. They should be challenging every single thing that goes on so that they can learn and develop their own leadership skills. So I ask you today to be leaders, to take that path less traveled, and really stand up and understand why these things are being done, and make decisions that are best for our kids and our community. And I would also like to talk about SEL really quick. So on the subject of SEL, I get, for my second grader, a packet that comes home every week of all the things he's working on. Math, reading, English. But what he doesn't have in there is what is being taught in the SEL curriculum. So the social learning curriculum is not something that's spelled out to me. So I found out from a friend that there's actually a handout and certain things that are being discussed every day. And so my son comes home with a packet that says, tell me about a time that you made another child sad. Well, you know what? I don't think that that's something that we should be talking about in the classroom, and I don't think that that's anything that me as a parent shouldn't be in charge of. I don't need a teacher to be telling my child how he needs to feel. That is my job as a parent, not as a school teacher. So I ask you, if you think that it's being transparent in school for these things, it's not, and we need to make that more transparent for the parents, because I'll tell you, I'm very disappointed in what's being taught to my son every day. Thank you.
Christina Abel.
Christina Abel, 9043 Teal Place, St. John, Indiana.
Thank you.
So we started this meeting saying the Pledge of Allegiance. In saying the Pledge of Allegiance, we pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America with liberty and justice for all. The definition of liberty is the state of being free within a society from oppressive restrictions imposed by authority on one's way of life, behavior, and political views. So we all just made that pledge, yet we continue to come to this board and we continue to want to have our own rights for our children. You all just said that pledge, and you're not living or abiding by the pledge that you just stated. How many times do we see on the news that that COVID-positive children were filling the hospitals over the last few months? Lots of times, right? Yet, according to the CDC website, that line of 0 deaths of all the children is still following that baseline as it has from the beginning of the pandemic. It's never fluctuated, has not gone up, has never peaked. It's continued to follow that same baseline. Yet, we can still continue to say that these kids are the problem. I'm asking you all to use a little bit of common sense and critical thinking. If we're listening to Fauci, the politicians, the CDC, the WHO, the NIH, yet our southern border remains open while we fly untested, unvaccinated migrants all over the country while they remain complacent or silent about how that is affecting the spread. If they were so concerned, wouldn't they have shut down that southern border? Would they not have done that? They're not doing that because they're not concerned. They just want power. They just want to manipulate us. If they didn't, we would have shut down the border while we're shutting down flights from other countries due to Omicron. We are harming our children, and the same people that are wanting masks are the same people that we see in public maskless at Target, the grocery store, school events here, bars, etc. So what's the problem? Is it the kids that have been proven to not be the super spreaders like adults, the same kids that aren't dying from this virus? The kids are the problem, and they are the ones suffering. A Brown University study tracking cognitive development in small children attributes a dramatic drop in verbal and nonverbal development to masking. The kids are the ones that are being hindered in reading and speech skills. They are the ones that will fall behind. It's sad that this board doesn't see the blanket effects that these masks have for the quality of their education as the main reason for your being elected is to protect their education, ensure that no kid is left behind, ensure their social and emotional well-being. Yet you continue to listen to the blanket hypocrisy by politicians and are unable to use critical thinking to understand that something is not right with all of this. If they're not following the rules.
Thank you. that's the end of our public comments. So with that, we'll move on to board comments and consideration of future agenda items. We'll start with Mr. Marshall.
Thank you, Madam President. My only comment is I wish everyone a safe and well holiday season. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Kelly?
Same. Like to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Speaking of New Year, I look forward to hopefully cases trending downward and maybe some relief from the General Assembly on quarantine, and we can start to discuss what a optional mask plan might look like at some point.
That's all. Thank you. Dr. Medlin?
I'd just like to thank the teachers, the administration, and the staff for everything that they've done for our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Malco?
I'm sorry, Ms. Kelly, I could not hear what you were saying exactly. What did you say? Did you say something about, go ahead, would you?
I can't repeat that verbatim because it's off the cuff, but I just wished everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and said, speaking of New Year, I hope that when we return from break that we can start to approach what a mask optional policy might look like, depending on what the General Assembly comes up with at the beginning of the year, any changes to quarantine, that type of thing, and that our cases are trending down. Today we had 25 positive cases just today.
In our district, right?
Which, you know, if we were quarantining, could be, what, 250 students sent home to sit in front of a computer screen, which I can't go with that. My goal has been, since the beginning of the school year, to keep as many kids in school as possible and not sitting at home isolated in front of a computer screen.
For 14 days, right? For 14 days. So, Dr. Malco?
Well, you know, I was glad to hear her mention about having some discussion about the mask mandates. And you know, I've been asking for that for quite a while. I love what Tippecanoe New School Corporation did. Now, that it would be the Lafayette area, the countryside around Lafayette. And actually, I was going to make a motion similar to Tippecanoe's until our numbers went up. And the quarantine requirement that we are locked into. So I think that all of us sit here, and I don't want to speak for my board members, but we all care about kids, and children do come first as we make our decisions. Our decisions are not made, or at least mine, I should say mine, are not made by this person over here who's screaming and yelling, and that person being nice, and this person calling me. And you know, it's made based on what is best for children. But unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, when we have children, we also have teachers. So we also have to be cognizant of what's going on with them. And if this quarantining policy was not here, and you take it lightly, we don't take it lightly, because what will happen is exactly what happened at Hanover. They opened up the buildings. They had to close them back down because it got too involved with absences with the staff members. So yeah, I think a lot of schools in the area are trying their best. I get what you're saying about going to public events. You know, I totally get it. I mean, I totally get it. I get just as frustrated as you. I want normalcy just as much as anyone else. You know, I was at that Andrean basketball game with Lake Central. It was a beautiful event. It was well organized, tons of people, maybe 5 masks. And everybody was happy and having a good time. Same thing with the Harvest Classic the week before, where we had maybe 15, 16 districts from throughout the area, all the way down to Indianapolis, all the way from Brother Rice in Illinois coming over for wrestling. Very few masks. So I really get that. I really get that. What's holding us and putting us in a corner is that quarantining policy. That's where the change needs to be made. So I thank you very much for reaching out to your legislators. That's where the power is right now. We are not willing, and actually I really am happy that Dr. Veracco has taken that stance. He's not willing to go against the Indiana Department of Health code. I don't think it's right. I think it's wrong. I think we're all in a kind of a mess for it. And I would love for us to do something like Topeka New School Corporation did, which is basically, hey, once our school board and our school administrators are released of the responsibility of the quarantining issue that has surfaced, once that's over with, that quarantining policy is taken away and we've got it resolved at the state level, then we will immediately go masked by choice. It would be free choice. But until that one little snippet of information, which is bigger than what we realize, is handled, our hands are tied. And I was ready to come and make that motion tonight until our numbers went up. And then I started thinking of the quarantining issue. But Ms. Kelly, I like your idea that in January, if everybody can be healthy, stay healthy, our numbers stay low, we can have some meeting, or at least one meeting, and get this started, the mask optional. That's a plan. That's a good plan. It's a good plan.
So, thank you. Is that all?
Oh, that's all I have to say, yeah.
And then I would also like to,
This isn't Q&A.
I'd like to wish each and every LC community member, students, staff, administrators, a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thank you for all that you've done, and we'll see you in 2022. And with that, we'll move on to Dr. Veracco, board calendar of future activities.
Yeah, we are here again on that January 3rd. It's a teacher record day and a work day, not a student day, but we still have our meeting scheduled for that day. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, do we have a motion for adjournment?
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion by Mrs. Kelly. I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.